Hello, and welcome to this week's edition of Greek the Week. Jan and I are here. I'm Mona, and Jan is here, and she's chosen our topic for today about us being a bother. So, what about it, Jan? Are we a bother or not a bother?
Well, I used to be in Toastmasters, and there was a woman who that was her topic. I don't want to be a bother, but then she talked about how these people, they don't take care of themselves, and so definitely they are a bother. And so I keep going back to Dr. Glasser and the reality therapy. I mean, the big message that I got when I read his book Reality Therapy was taking responsibility for yourself. And for a lot of people, that's a dirty word. We don't want to take responsibility for ourselves, and it's too much trouble to do a lot of things that we're supposed to do. But I thought, well, maybe if we turn that around a little bit, and for our own sake, instead of talking about, I don't want, I don't really want to take responsibility for myself. What if we were to turn it around and say, well, if I don't take care of myself, then somebody else may have to at a point when I can't do it anymore. And so if I'm looking at how it's going to help somebody else, maybe people will be more likely to do something for themselves. And that somebody else can be their older self, because they have done studies where they showed people a picture of themselves 30 years older, and they can identify with that person, and they're more likely to change their habits and take care of themselves and take responsibility for themselves. So I was just thinking about, we kind of toss that idea around and see what we can do, because ultimately we have to take responsibility for ourselves. Otherwise, somebody's going to pick it up for us. Somebody's going to have to do it. It's either, especially as we get older, it's, a loved one, or we get put in a skilled nursing facility and somebody else is going to have to take care of us. So how can we make it so that we are more interested and more motivated to take care of ourselves, not only our health, but our financial situation, and a lot of other things that can go awry if we don't.
Yeah, well, you've given a whole new slant to it just in your definition, although I read about, what you had said that we were going to be talking about. I don't want to be a bother, as in I don't want people to have to take care of me, is what you're talking about, huh?
Right.
Kind of the thing of it is that all of us, we have the healthcare system, and which is, well, here's the thing. The strong carry the weak, the rich carry the poor, the healthy carry the sick, the happy help carry the unhappy, or help carry the sad. The thing of it is that that's part of our jobs in life. That's part of our being here. That's part of our purpose, is to help others, because somebody's always carrying us. We're getting direction from others. And if we see it as I'm being a bother, if we could begin to switch it around, and not only looking at it that we will get older, and the fact that when we get older, we do need maybe a cane or glasses, is that a bother?
Well, it's not a bother. I mean, it might be a bother to us, but it's a natural progression. Eventually, we know we're going to get there. But you can prolong, how long it takes before you need that cane. Sometimes.
And that we can be a bother to others, and that they may need to take care of us to a degree or help with something. But if we're not bothersome,
right.
If we appreciate the care they're giving, if we're thankful for it, if we have genuine gratitude,
right. Yeah.
Then
yes.
Yeah, it takes the bothering out of it.
Right.
For the caregiver. Right.
Yeah. I mean, that's all part of it too. It's like, because I've heard people say, I don't want to be a bother. I don't want you to have to worry about this. And the thing is, well, who's going to pick up the slack if it's not me?
Right.
So, if you really don't want to be a bother, then what are you doing to help? And what are you doing to, for yourself so that you're not as much. I mean, you know that your loved ones will be there and will step in when they need to.
Right.
But then there are things that you can do to help yourself as well. And are you doing those things?
Right. So what are some of those things that we can do to not be a bother?
Well, I mean, one thing is to get enough sleep. I mean, the importance of sleep is huge because that's where our body repairs itself. And so if we're not taking care of ourselves, and one of the ways to take care of ourselves is to get enough sleep, we will get sick quicker and may not be able to function as well.
And what about movement? If we just sit all the time and we
Yep.
don't practice getting up and down, we may have to have one of those chairs that lifts us up.
That's right. Well, they're doing more and more studies that even if you exercise every day, if you're sitting at a desk the rest of the day, that's not good for you. You need to get up periodically during the day and move around because it's just not good for us to sit in one place for a prolonged period of time.
Right. Not only does that apply to our bodies, and it's one of the first laws of dynamics that an object that is immovable will remain immovable until it's moved upon.
Mm-hmm.
And if we stay, if we don't, I mean, even lifting our arms up and moving them around to see what range we can have, that kind of stuff can help keep us more mobile, where we can not have to be using, or at least maybe prolong the use of artificial help.
Right. Well, I do have exercises for people sitting down, sitting at your desk. If you're at your desk all the time, there are things you can do, maybe stand up and stretch a little bit and some, I mean, there are things, if you just look around, there is help out there to give you some tips and ideas of what to do for yourself and how to ensure that you do stay healthy longer and capable longer. And some of them we don't want to do, but eventually somebody's going to have to help us out.
Right. So also working on our attitude as well as our physical being.
Right. And to be appreciative. When you can't do something. I mean, because some people go the other extreme. They really don't want to be a bother, and yet they can't do things for themselves, but they don't want to ask for help, and that's not good either. So it's learning, what you can do for yourself and what you do have to ask for help, and then be pleasant when you do ask for help, and be a little tolerant, and that even if it's not done the way that you want it to be done, that they're helping, and at least somebody is there.
Yeah. So that kind of goes hand in hand with one of Dr. Glasser's axioms about what happened in the past has everything to do with where you are right now.
Yeah, right.
What did happen or what didn't happen. And it has to do with how healthy we have kept ourselves, that we can live healthy until our time is up.
Right. But then, like you have said, it is what it is, and we are where we are, and it doesn't do much good for us to go back and say, well, if only I had exercised more, if only I had watched what I ate, if only I had gotten better sleep. Well, that time is past.
Right.
What can you do now?
Right.
Do you want to try to get better? What can you do to make the situation as tolerable as possible?
Right, because those if onlys are just magical thinking that doesn't work.
Right.
And even if we could have had control over the past, which we can't, we may be beating ourselves up because we didn't do those things. And what's that going to do? And that's
Correct.
really going to make you a bother.
Right. Because nobody wants to hear about it, what you didn't do.
Exactly. So whenever those times do come, whether it is a temporary thing like a broken foot or a broken arm that someone needs to help you dress or help you be more mobile, it's just having a good attitude about it and doing the best you can with what you have.
Right.
and appreciating the other person.
Yeah.
And recently had a group of people together, and I was asking them, getting input from everyone. I said, what is an accomplishment that you're proud of, that you would like to, that if in just a normal conversation, people may not know about it. So this is your time to toot your own horn. What is it, something that you are really proud of? It's an accomplishment in your life, And there was about 6 or 7 of us, and some people had, some really great, like, climb Mount Kilimanjaro. They had some things that they were really,
Wow.
things that them and was really accomplished by. And this other person says, well, I guess my greatest accomplishment is just being me. It said, I like to think that I've been a pretty good husband, a pretty good dad, a pretty good granddad. And I thought, you know what? That really is a good accomplishment.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
And realizing that maybe I haven't been a bother. Kind of go hand in hand with this.
Right.
To just be the best that I can be, even in this debilitating situation.
Yeah.
I think of my little sister that passed away recently, that, I mean, she was so frail and had so many times that she was just at that revolving door of heaven and made it to come back. And there was a thing that she, was concerned about being a bother, yet she had such a sweet spirit.
Yeah.
That everyone taking care of her was just like, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. And I don't think she did, because I don't think she did worry about it, even though she wished that things had been different.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's part of what I was getting at too, is, it is okay to ask people for help. You will get to the point where you do need help from somebody else, but make it pleasant for them. Make it so that they want to help you, that it's not a chore, that you aren't a bother to them, and that they enjoy helping you, because you are so appreciative, and help out however you can and do the things.
Yeah.
You can.
And then, all we can ever do is give information. All we can ever do is receive information.
Yeah.
So what information, can we give? Or what information can we be willing to receive that would help us to work with this, whether or not we're in the way?
And to acknowledge on those days that we're not feeling good, where we aren't in the mood to be appreciative and friendly and smile, we acknowledge that, and let the other person know. I mean, you can still tell them, I appreciate what you do, and just say, but I'm just not feeling well right now. I mean, again, give the person information of where you are.
Right. And then sometimes the caregivers feel really bad because they can't do enough.
Yeah.
And it's maybe doing what you possibly can to level the playing field for all. It may be inconvenient what the caregiver needs to give to you, but quite frequently, if we can just express that appreciation, it's going to relieve their stress to a degree. I'm thinking of a situation where there was a divorced couple, and the child, well, matter of fact, the school counselor called the kid in because their grades were diminishing, and was wanting to know, what some of the things. The parents had been divorced for a long time, and they had joint custody, and the child had a good relationship with both parents, with the exception that they were always sending messages to one another through the child.
Oh.
And that was a bother.
Yes.
And it was so bothersome to the child. Well, the child finally got enough courage to say, I'm not telling mom what you said. Yeah. I'm not telling dad what you said. I'm not going to be the go-between.
Well, good for the child to stand up and be able to recognize that was going on.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, And so the child had got to the point where they, would just come right out and say, I'm not telling mom that, I'm not telling dad that. But they felt guilty because, hey, I'm a kid and I'm supposed to obey my parents.
Right.
And the counselor helped her to acknowledge the fact, or to talk with each parent individually, that, when you ask me what's going on in dad's life, I'm not going to rat on him. I'm not going to tell you because that was my time with him. But the fact that I'm not telling you makes me feel guilty.
Because you asked
And
me.
it hurts me because I feel like I'm being disrespectful to you because I'm trying to be respectful to dad.
Right.
And the same thing is true. He asked me questions about you, and I don't share because I don't want to be unloyal to you. But it really, we need to be honest with what our emotions are, what we're going through, and our giving our information to others so that we can, I'm trying to work with you here.
Yeah.
I'm trying to make the best that we can.
Yeah, and I mean that goes back to trying to think of the other person who you're dealing with instead of just thinking of yourself. Is to think of how the other, what you are doing to the other person by asking them to rat on their dad,
Right.
or having them be the messenger.
Or not to rat on, but just want to find out, well, is he with someone else now?
Right.
Or all this kind of stuff. And I mean, that's not the child's place to be.
No, it's not. It's not. It's not.
And
but a lot of divorced couples just don't look at that. They don't see that perspective. It's, again, they're focusing just on themselves and not focusing on the effect that they're having on the people around them, especially a child. Oh my goodness, a child should never be put in a position like that. I mean, that's such a huge burden to place on the child.
Right. And it's even a huge burden for the child to have to speak up and say,
oh yeah, oh yeah,
you are contributing to my.
Yeah, I'm not a big movie goer, but there are a few movies that have stuck with me, and one is the one Catch Me If You Can. Um, Leonardo DiCaprio, I think, was in it, and he was a kid, 16 years old, who ended up going into a life of fraud and would create checks that, or change the name on the check so that he would get the money and stuff, or use another his account and learn how to counterfeit and all this kind of stuff. But it all started when he was like 16 years old, and his parents, it's based on a true story, is, I guess, the thing on that. And so when he was 16 years old, his parents asked him which parent he wanted to live with. And I'm going, whoa, what a loaded, unfair question to ask a child to choose. I mean, you're choosing between your mother and your father as to who you're staying with. And I just think some parents just really don't realize what they are asking their children to do. And I think his decision was not to go with either. He just kind of went on his own, and then he had to support himself, and this is how he got into this.
That's how he got into fraud.
Yeah. Of course, he ended up being the part of the FBI and helping them to catch other people because he knew all the tricks, and he was a pretty smart guy and stuff. So I mean, it turned out good for him. But a lot of parents going through divorce, they're really not thinking about who they're bothering. It's all about me and what I want, and I mean that focus just has to shift and say what's best for the children. I mean, that was the one thing when I was going through my divorce. My kids were very young, 2 and 5, and I just didn't want them hurting as little as possible. I knew they were going to hurt. There's no way that they wouldn't be scarred some way, but I wanted to make their life as easy and with as few changes as possible. And I went, out of my way to do that. But I've seen so many parents who don't, and put the child in the middle, like the example you were given. And, and even some of the court's decisions, I mean, especially with a small child, their parents are their parents. And to say that you can't see one of them, even if they're a bad person or bad example, what does that do to the child?
Right. So disconnecting,
Yes.
because they're still your parent. And so the thing of it is, if that person even is a bother, they're still your parent. They're still your
Right.
child of
That's
being taken
right.
care of, even if they have that. Or maybe it's maybe a reframing, as we can begin to, it's what I can do, and be thankful for that, and be thankful then for all of the resources that we have, both volunteer and paid.
Right. Right.
And seeing how we can work every area of our life, because we're always everything is a complete whole. I mean, just being a caregiver for someone else is not just, it's not just physically, it's mentally, it's emotionally, it's, all of those, to helping them to help themselves, even
Right.
if they're in an ability, even when they're in a position where it's not that easy to help themselves.
Yeah. Yes. So just to know that there are things you can do for yourself. I mean, at the beginning, I was using the idea that you're not taking care of yourself because you don't want to take responsibility. But I think the reverse is true, is where we're getting here, where we're not taking care of ourselves and we're not really thinking about the impact on anybody else. And so if we look at the impact on other people, both to help incentivize us to take care of ourselves, but also so that we're not damaging that relationship that we have with that other person, or damaging that other person in any way.
Right. And then not only, being thankful for, but not making so many demands upon.
Yeah. Yeah.
And even if you do need, and there may be times that you do need someone to scratch your back. There may be times that you do need someone to run an errand for you or to get something for you. But to ask them instead of, right now,
Right.
these are some things I need. But also, as the caregiver or the mate or the whomever, make me a list of things, and so that I can handle these things within my own time frame, within my own schedule. It's giving that information, whether it's the person that's being taken care of or the person that's taken care of, so that you're more generous, you're more willing to bend and move and, make it where it's amiable for both or for all.
Yeah. Yeah, because those relationships are important, and you don't want to get to the point where nobody will come around to help you. I mean, I know people that have gotten to that point where their family members have pulled away because they just asked too much, or they weren't appreciative, um, and it's so unfortunate that happens, and then who's the one getting hurt or suffering in the end? So you
Right.
do need to take responsibility for yourself and know that the day will come where you will need that assistance, and you really don't want to be a bother, but you're going to have to be a bother, and maybe you can make it a little more pleasant for the other person.
And even before we get to that dire need, we still need the people.
We do, absolutely, yes.
And it's not
Good
pushing them
point.
away before it
Good point.
becomes to that, I'm
Right.
pushed away because it's so hard to take care of me.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it's looking at the big picture, how that every second is attached to the next second.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah, keeping the big picture in mind, knowing, this brother of mine, he just annoys me to no end, but he is my brother. and
yeah,
I do want to keep that relationship going, because who knows who is going to need whom
right.
when the time comes, and we want to be there for them. I mean, it's sad to see people that have family members, but nobody's coming around to help because they've alienated themselves. And then watching people get older, I've noticed mostly the men, the more strong, set in their ways kind of guys that you knew when they were younger. As they're getting older, they mellow out a little bit, and then you forget about why you were upset at them. And,
yeah. Well, now we're going with Carl Jung.
yeah.
Because it's the male and the female. The more the male can get in touch with his female side and be more mellowed out, and the more the female can get in touch with her taking care of side,
Right.
then the more. And I think about what was the one, Journey Out of Africa or something in Africa,
Okay.
and I don't remember the people that was in it, but I do remember that when she had to go to Africa for some reason, I think anyway, she insisted on taking all of her fine china and all this kind
Oh,
of
wow.
stuff. And it was back in the 1800s, and it was not easy to pack and to take all that stuff and all that. And anyway, before the movie was over with, the maid was so enjoying sitting down and having tea with her. And before it had been those big, those
The class.
barriers for their relationship that was difficult. And the once we can begin to understand and appreciate each other, we can mellow out. All of us can
Right.
mellow out.
Right.
And or become more responsible for taking something so fragile to such a unhealthy, or not unhealthy, but to such a difficult environment. Trying to take something really fragile into a difficult environment. And they did it. I mean, it was a bother, yeah, but I'll do it because I care about you.
Right.
But then eventually just beginning to appreciate that, yeah, I guess it's okay to sit here and drink a little tea with you.
Yeah.
And age does, by that very aging, may have the opportunity to, but unfortunately it just doesn't work that way all the way around until we cooperate.
Mm-hmm.
And that knowing that we are aging, and how do I cooperate with the fact that the older I get, the more childlike I become.
Right.
Not only in learning to walk or keeping up being able to walk.
Yeah.
And that is, the growing and the demising, and that we only have so many days on planet Earth. So let's live it as pleasantly as we can, not only for us, but for others also.
Yeah. That just brought to mind, because it's hard for me to accept help from other people. I'm one of those that, I can do it, I can handle it. And, a few weeks ago, I had the shingles, and there was really just 2 days that I was down on it. And my husband, it was New Year's Eve actually, and he was getting ready to go to work. And I said, can you please not go to work today and stay home with me? Which is just so hard for me to ask him to do that. And he was like, oh, well, sure. Do you want me to get you something? Want me to make you some breakfast? And he was just so wonderful. So it's, learning to ask for help when you need it, and but take care of yourself too.
Take care of yourself too, and realizing that needing someone to help you does not diminish you.
Right.
Stepping aside and letting someone else get the accolades doesn't diminish who you are.
No.
That being who you are and being true to you. And it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to receive it. It's okay to give it. It's okay. Maybe we become bothersome when we try to do it without gaining permission to.
Yeah.
And many times, then we're not in control, so we try to be in control by making demands.
Yeah.
And being that bother.
Right. And nobody likes that. No.
Right.
I mean, people know when you need help and when you're hurting, and they're more than happy to help out. But the way you ask and the way you provide that information is huge.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Oh, Steve Hartman on the road, that's at the end of the Friday newscast. It's been some time back, but there was a lady that wanted to live in her own home. And she could do it fairly well when she got up in the morning and was in her wheelchair. She could roll around, and things were made where it was more convenient for her to live independently. But she could not get in and out of her bed.
Oh.
or into a wheelchair. It was just, for whatever reason, she could not do it. It did not have the body strength, the upper strength, or didn't have a lift, whatever. And someone in the neighborhood rounded up the men in the neighborhood, especially a few women did, but it was mainly the men because she was a real large person.
Okay.
And they has that time, and there was 2 of them that would meet every morning and every evening, or they would go every night and put her to bed.
Wow. Wow.
And they interviewed several of the people that had done that and how awkward it was for them, but what a blessing it had become.
Yeah.
And then for her too, to realize that, hey, not only is someone coming in to help me, but that someone rounded up a whole posse.
Right. Oh, there were a lot of other people who were willing to help out. And that's a good feeling to know that people are willing to help you out and do something.
Right. And that obviously I matter that much because they're doing it, and and they all really learned to be nice, and they learned to love her, and she learned to love them. And
Yeah.
it was just,
We need to do more of that.
yeah, it's just being willing to reach out,
Yeah.
being willing to, and then help the person the caretaker needs help, and the person being taken care of needs help.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
that we really can help each other. And as we check our attitudes in the doing it,
Yeah.
whether it's being done for us or whether we're doing it for someone else.
Well, I guess we're out of time for today. Good food for thought here, and think about what we can do to not be a bother, but then to learn to know when to ask for help and when to help others, and try to understand when others need the help and to be there.
Right.
So thanks everybody for joining, and thanks for those who are listening on the replay, and we'll see you next week for another edition of Greet the Week.